So, very good morning to all of you. It's such a pleasure to see 240 people in this webinar. And thank you, NFE, for extending this invitation to me. And I've just become a member of NFE, and I look forward to seeing how one could together add more value to the aspects of safety, reliability, and convenience in the electrical systems. Uh, what I chose to talk about, on the subject of IEC 61439, considering all the dangers and the um, not so great practices which are leading to fire hazards and losing of life, materials, and so on and so forth, is that we must recognize that there are two types of panel builders. One is the compliant panel builder, and the other is the careless panel builder, the person who cares a little less when it comes to the quality aspects of safety. So the next slide we'll see as we go forward. I'd like to explain this more, but before that, a little about myself to set the context. I started business in the year 1983. This is about 41 years ago, straight out of college. Started off with an electrical trading company, Money Sales Bangalore. Today, we are amongst the top distributors for Legrand in South India. We are also significant stockists for ABB and Socomec, and we are distributors South India for Electron. In order for me to move from products to solutions, I started in the year 1990, Load Controls, switchboard manufacturing company. Today, we manufacture both low voltage and medium voltage switchboards with partnerships with Schneider. For power factor, we have TDK. We are one of the biggest partners of Modutech, and we manufacture motor control and power control centers, bus ducts, so on and so forth. And one of the things which happened as a panel builder was I stumbled upon this technology of modular enclosures. Previous slide, please. And in this modular enclosures, I realized that there was a huge amount of standardization and scaling possibility when it came to the enclosures and therefore the switchboards, and hence the foundation of the third company, Modutech, which today we are also branding for two multinational companies and growing from strength to strength. So coming back to IEC 61439, this is a standard. I would like each and every one of us to appreciate that it is mandatory as a legislation in the European Union, in UK and Australia. So you can well imagine that it is only a matter of time before India too makes this mandatory. If you look at, if you are a panel builder, you would agree with me that probably just 5 years back, when 10 inquiries were received, hardly 2 or 3 would ask for IEC 61439. But today, the number has moved to 7 to 8 out of 10. Earlier, it was only the major cities where people were aware of the standard and wanted to follow it.
Mr.
But
Mani,
today, even in the, yep.
Mr. Mani, 1 minute. Sorry to interrupt you. Because I would like to make an important, message to all the participants.
Sure.
This standard 61439, it is not only mandatory in Europe or other countries. It is legally mandatory in India as well, because in 2023, June 8th, the CEA regulation, the latest central electricity regulation has been published. Regulation 14.2 says NEC, NBC has to be made, they are made mandatory, shall be followed. And sub-regulation 3 says, every product used in the electrical installation shall be as per IS standards. And now 61439, part 1 to 7 is already an Indian standard. So compliance to the standard or compliance to 61439 is already mandatory, legally mandatory. Thank you very much. I just would like to add.
Thank you. I stand corrected and appreciate that. It's a very good development, and I couldn't be more happier. So I was talking to you about how the standard is moving from cities to two-tier cities, and then even if you look at projects, we find that, from the oil and gas and data segment, data center type of jobs, it's also going into the building and industry. And I'm very glad that, this is today, we're going to be seeing more and more of IEC 61439. Probably it'll move to 10 out of 10 in the tenders, as what Mr. Gopakumar said, and let's hope for the best. Next slide, please. So in order for us to really reach out to the panel builders across the length and breadth of our beautiful country, as well as the length and breadth of the entire globe, I would say that there is a lot of educational marketing which is required. COSMA is the Control Panel and Switchgear Manufacturers Association, and we do a lot of work in this regard. NFE, the National Federation of Engineers, as you can see, this is a beautiful platform which has been provided by it to disseminate this knowledge even further. IMA, the Indian Electrical and Electronics Manufacturers Association, is also doing yeoman service in the areas of taking standards forward. SEMA, the Consulting Electrical Engineers Association of Maharashtra, is also conducting a program called SEMA Tech. It is on 5th of October, and then 2 more shortly after that, again with the intention of seeing how we can reach out to the nook and corner of the country. Social media, white papers, exhibitions, seminars, and webinars like this, all of these will need to be seeing more and more of reaching out to people as we go forward. Now, the most important aspect of IEC 61439 is that it builds trust. And this trust is very important. And where does it start? It starts with the client defining his need, and he declares his budget to the electrical consultant. The electrical consultant takes this brief, and then he advises the client on the pros and cons of how the tender should be worked out and the importance of compliance. And then it comes to the panel builder. And here again, as I said, we have the compliant panel builder and the careless panel builder. So with all respects to panel builders, this is something which we really need to be doing a lot of introspection on and seeing how we can improve things. Next slide, please. So when I say compliant panel builders, what I mean is if you take an aluminum bus bar or a copper bus bar, you have electrolytic grade and you have commercial grade. And mind you, when you look at it, you'll not know the difference. But the price difference is around 40%. And therefore, you can well imagine how important it is for a consultant to ask the panel builder for the electrolytic grade test which has been done. ISI marked wires, ideally with being halogen free in terms of the insulation. This is something which is very important, but how many consultants and how many end users are aware that there are non-ISI grade wires and compromised in metal alloys and the insulation? These are things which goes even up to the lugs in terms of sizing, in terms of the material. So it's very important for us to recognize that safety is everyone's responsibility. And the ones who go for short-term goals and the benefits of quick wins, we have to see how to control them in our entire ecosystem. Next slide, please. So the big differentiator, please, one slide back. The big differentiator between IEC 60439 and 61439 is the fact that 61439 not only allows the enclosure to be tested along with the switchgear, which is very important, so it becomes one big comprehensive unit, but it also allows for verification by testing, verification by comparison with reference design, and verification by assessment. So there are multiple ways in which one can arrive at the compliance, which is a very good thing. Next slide, please. So this is something, where the entire 12 tests which are presently there in 61439 can be divided into verification of construction as well as the verification of performance. And each one of these are available in detail in the standard. And it's I'll be touching upon the major points as we go forward. Next slide, please. So the important distinction which consultants and end users will have to identify with is the definition of an OEM manufacturer. And I find that this is quite misunderstood in the marketplace today. According to IEC 61439, the original manufacturer of a switchgear and control gear assembly is the organization that designed and verified the assembly, which means, for example, Modutech. You could also put in that example Schneider or ABB or LK or whatever. But the important point is we have to recognize that when the enclosure manufacturer and the switchgear manufacturer comes together, it's not just the switchgear manufacturer who qualifies to this positioning of an OEM manufacturer, but it is anyone who designs and gets his design verified as a switchboard, he becomes a original manufacturer. To that extent, Aero Electricals or Marine Electricals are also OEM manufacturers. And then we also have the original. Okay, let me go forward. So we have the, in order for us to understand this entire aspect of IEC 61439, here's another shout out to all consultants that you will, my recommendation is that we'll have to follow the standards which are advocated by all the advanced countries. What do? They ask the panel builder to submit the declaration of compliance. Now, what is the declaration of compliance? The 12 tests which the IEC 61439 talks about, we need a declaration as to how each panel which is supplied to a particular project is compliant to each of these tests. And this is the format in which this compliance has to be given. And my earnest appeal is that consultants should insist on this declaration of compliance coming from the panel builders. Next slide, please. Now, we have already spoken about device substitution, and I saw in the questions Mr. Vinod Panchal has asked as to what are the conditions for device substitution. And here they are, that when you say substitute Eaton switchgear with an ABB switchgear, then what happens is ABB switchgear can be used in place of Eaton, but the device power loss has to be equivalent to Eaton or less than Eaton. Similarly, the terminal temperature rise. The terminal temperature rise is a data which is available with every switchgear manufacturer. That of ABB will have to be equivalent to Eaton or lesser than Eaton. And then the dimension of the cubicle which is being made, it has to be equal to or bigger than the type tested verified design. So if these conditions are met, then device substitution is permitted in Australia and New Zealand. Next slide, please. Now, it's in order for me to run through all the tests one by one, time will not permit. So I thought I should just talk about an 80-20 focus, which are the 20% of the rules which the consultant and the panel builder will have to focus on in order to ensure that the compliance takes place. So number one, we have dielectric properties, short circuit, clearance and creepage, all of them belong to a kind of a similar family. Now, we see here in the screen that we have the metal conductors shown in 3 parts. And when there is an insulated barrier, when you talk about clearance, the clearance is measured as the bird flies from one point to the other. Whereas when you come down and you see the creepage distances, it is as the ant walks from one end to the other. That is the creepage distance. Now, both the creepage distance as well as the clearance will dictate the kind of voltage which the panel busbar system can take. And today, with renewables, we are talking about not just 415 volts, we're talking about 800 volts, and probably it'll go up further. So it's very important for us to understand these things, ensure that the panel builder is writing this out in his technical specifications, and then this gets approved. Similarly, the busbar size, the material, the insulation support, the air volume inside the busbar chamber, all these are factors which impact the short circuit withstand capability of the switchboard. Next slide, please. Now, when you see a panel which is being subjected to to a short circuit test, this is how it is assembled and fastened in the laboratory, and before test and after test. So both these situations are looked at, and then whether it is passed or failed, there are various criteria to ensure that one arrives at what is right and what is wrong. Next. Temperature rise parameters from the switchboard, as what you can see in the picture, both at the top as well as at the bottom. The top, you have a 3-meter copper which comes out of the switchboard. Now, it's important for this 3-meter to be there for both bus bar as well as the cable. And then again here, for temperature rise parameters, the size and the material of the bus bar is important, the air volume is important. Every joint is an important area which needs to be checked, and it needs to be checked for the millivolt drop test. This is critical. Bus bars, you can either go for sleeves or you can go for painting. And ideally, if you go for black color, then it absorbs the heat from the bus bar, and therefore it gives you a better temperature rise. And then you can have single run of bus bar, double run of bus bar, but try to avoid 3 runs of bus bar, because when you have 3 runs of bus bar, the middle bus bar hardly carries any current. And then you have different configurations of bus bar. You can have interleaved bus bar, you can have one on top of the other in terms of 2-tier bus bar arrangements. Each one of them have got different distinct advantages, pros and cons in terms of the current carrying capability. And then, the watt loss of the devices will need to be looked into. And if it is IP rating plays a very important role. If it is, what is the more stringent the IP, the more difficult will it be to pass the temperature rise test. So when we come to IP, it's very important for us to understand how the dust test gets done and how the liquid test gets done. So there are, of course, different ways of doing it in different laboratories, but generally the entire panel is pushed inside a huge chamber, and fine dust is sprayed from all over. And then after a while, when the panel is removed back outside and doors opened, you will see whether the powder has gone in or not. Similarly, water test, and it has got different criteria, which I'll come to. So generally, IP 4X to 55 is for indoor, and up to IP 66 is for outdoor. This is the general ones. Of course, you can ask for different specs depending upon your application. And then you have the natural and forced ventilation is an important part. You see, it's very important for the consultant to take a specification and read through every page, because what result one gets with forced ventilation is not as good as the result what one would get with natural ventilation. So these finer aspects of IEC 61439 will need to be understood, absorbed, and executed. Next slide, please. These are the different solid entry specifications ranging from IP1X to IP6X. Next slide, please. And then we have the water. Water also coming vertically, coming at an angle, coming at a force, and then submerging the entire panel inside water, and then submerging it inside the water for a particular distance. So all these are the second digit of the IP, which defines the water ingress. Next stage, next slide, please. So this is the various IP ingress protection. We need to understand this. So if you say IP 44, for example, then you say that it is water splashing against the enclosure from any direction on the water part of it, and then objects above 1 mm, the objects actually below 1 mm only. 1 mm is the max. You can't have anything more than 1 mm going inside. So this is how you arrive at the IP rating of an enclosure, and it's very important that each one of us understand it. More importantly, why it is required. For example, when you talk in terms of a cement plant application, then you will definitely need to go for IP54 for indoor And if it is outdoor, you'll have to probably look at IP66. So depending on the application, at the same time, if the switchboard is going to be in an air-conditioned environment in an IT plant, then probably IP42 is more than enough. So the consultant will have to look at what is the application and then choose the IP rating and put it in the specifications for the switchboard manufacturer to align with it. Next slide, please. Now, there are various other tests which I wouldn't be going into great detail in. There is the resistance to corrosion test. There is the thermal stability of the enclosure. There are certain parts of the enclosure which is subject to thermal instability. So we need to test it to see whether certain minimum standards as set out by the IEC 61439 is passed. Similarly, mechanical impact. If you are using too thin a gauge of the door, then you are not going to be passing the IK10 test or IK8 test, as the case may be. So it is important for us to understand how we need to specify the IK test so that the enclosure protects the electrical switchgear inside and also is sturdy enough to withstand the short circuit, God forbid it happens. Then you have the resistance to UV radiation, which of course is applicable only for outdoor panels. And then how you lift a panel is also important, because when you're lifting the panel should not collapse. So there are certain minimum criteria for that. Marking is an important area on the nameplates as to how it should be legible even 5 years from now, 20 years from now. And then the resistance to heat and fire. So this is different for the current carrying insulators and different for ACB enclosure, for example, which comes in plastic. So each one has got a particular threshold of glow wire test which needs to be passed. And all these are important aspects to be looked into for one to be compliant with IEC 61439. Now, this is a salt spray chamber, which I thought it would be of interest for you to understand as to how the various sample of a switchboard, this may be a small box is made 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot and kept inside this salt spray chamber. And then this mist is induced at a particular temperature so that we have to look at after X number of hours, what is the rust formation? Is it white rust or is it red rust? So these are all certain tests which gets done in the laboratories to differentiate between one who has done a good quality of powder coating or one who has used a good material for the switchboard as against one who has compromised on this. Next slide, please. So IK test is, as I said, it goes all the way up to IK10, and I'm happy to inform you that all our Modutech type test certifications are with IK10, and this is important for us to appreciate that this is critical for us to understand. Just like when we buy a car, we have a bumper in the front, and then we ensure that it doesn't get damaged. Similarly, here also you need to have a strong outer enclosure as much as internal structure to ensure that the panel is sturdy and it takes the purpose for which it is being made forward in a proper way. Next. So these are the forms of construction which has already been touched upon by Mr. Abhijit. So I'll pass this. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, this is a call to specifiers and end users that I would request that you specify. Now that we know that it is mandatory, then automatically we'll be seeing more and more of IEC 61439. But then ask for the complete certificate. Don't just be satisfied with the first page, because the first page only gives you a certain information that yes, it's an entry ticket. But then who is coming with the entry ticket is important for you to appreciate. Whether the type tested panel is with forced ventilation or whether it is with natural cooling, whether it is with copper bus bar or whether it is with aluminum bus bar, whether it is in single tire formation of ACB or whether it has got 2-tire formation of ACB also, whether it is single front only or whether it has got double front as well. Like that, there are so many aspects. Somebody asked in the Tanveer Singh has asked that is 61439 with for VFD applications in IP65 Is it possible to get it done? There's nothing that is not possible in the sense that it'll only mean that the size of the enclosure will have to be more. You have to do your calculations for your temperature rise. That is the most important criteria to pass when it comes to outdoor enclosures. So these are certain things which one needs to look at with a magnifying glass. Declaration of compliance, as what I had mentioned, is very important for consultants to ask for for the various projects. And then we have modular switchboards. In my opinion, from my experience, I can share that it definitely takes you 10 steps ahead as far as safety, flexibility, and compliance is concerned. And then you select an assembly manufacturer. So an assembly manufacturer is the person who's going to take after your design and then do the assembly. So he also needs to understand how to comply to IEC 61439. And together with the partner, all of us will need to be seeing how to help the customer specify his needs, how to be doing a little value engineering, how to guide him in configuring the panel better. And the routine verification tests, of course, is also has to be a given, whether it is going to be a factory acceptance test or a site acceptance test. This is different from the IEC 61439. Next slide, please. So as an OEM manufacturer or a panel builder, uh, as I said, adding value is very important. We need to be here to make electricity more safe and reliable, and therefore we need to be continuously thinking in terms of optimal designs. We need to select truly certified assembly systems. I'm saying that with a little bit of a sarcasm because unfortunately, in my experience, I have come across people who pose to be certified, but then actually you go into the details, they are not certified. Ask your OEM supplier to train you. This is very important. This training is extremely important with estimation and design software, assembly and installation guides, quality inspection guide with checklists. And these checklists, mind you, has been evolved over years of experience. And it is very important for us to train each and every as OEM partner to also align with the similar thought processes. And then work doesn't get over after the supply of the switchboard. Maintenance and end user guides and checklists are also important. And then when it comes to the design, manufacture, and verification of each assembly in compliance with the project specifications. So how does that happen? The OEM manufacturer's instructions should be clear, and the submission of the declaration of compliance will have to be hand-holding manner. It has to be taken forward. Now, when you look at IEC 61439, there are the routine verifications also, as I said, which comes uh, as a part and parcel of what a switchboard manufacturer should do in his factory. And here the degree of protection, the clearances and creepages, the protection against electric shock and integrity of the protective circuits, all of this will need to form part of your checklist. And the incorporation of built-in components. So what are the built-in components? What are the technical parameters? In fact, all this information should be available on a QR code, which is put on your panel so that at any point of time, 5 years down the line, 20 years down the line, by just scanning that QR code, the user will be able to get all these information. And this is very, very critical. It is a best practice which needs to be followed. And all of us have to go from point A to point B because what got us here won't get us there. So next slide, please. So my last slide, I'd like to thank NFE for this opportunity to evangelize IEC 61439 standards and beyond. I'm also happy to share that, in order for us from Modutech to take this concept to India and the world, we have also appointed Mrs. Brick and Bite, a very good fabrication shop in Mumbai. They are converting almost 200 tons every month as a mod hub for Modutech. So you can see more about them in their website. And this is the kind of certificate we give to panel partners. I'm happy to say that we have 97 panel partners across the country today. Can't wait to make it 100. And so here's an invitation to each and every one of you to join the modular, compliant, and sustainable mission to simplify panel building. Thank you.